Hi, and welcome. I'm Dr. Greg Dixon, and you are here for guidance documents, building accessible and user-friendly tools, our monthly webinar here for the months of March. And I do want to let everybody know, because various states require this, that we are recording this webinar, and the recording will be emailed out. The link to the recording will be emailed out to everybody who registered. So if you're here and you are in this, you're going to get to see it live and you'll have access to the recording, but folks who registered but couldn't make it live will be able to watch it. So welcome into everybody. We definitely appreciate your taking time out of your busy Head Start lives to join us for this hour. For those of you who are not familiar with Acorn Evaluation, we're about the people side of all things data. We do professional development programs and consulting services around the use of data for program improvement and basically helping you use data to make the most of your programs for the support of children and families. We have two websites. Acornevaluation.com is kind of the evaluation and consulting side. And if you just want to see a list of professional development offerings, acornlearning.com is a calendar that shows you everything that's coming up and little tiles that will lead to explanations of everything that is in the queue for the next year. I'm the Chief Learning Officer with Acorn Evaluation. I am actually filling in today for Jolene Torres, who's one of our project coordinators. She's under the weather, so I'm stepping in for her. She did all of the work. So organizing it, getting together, working with Amanda and Adriana. So if there's a lot of awesome things that happen in this webinar, it's credit to Jolene. I'm basically just going through her slides. Amanda and Adriana have worked really hard to get everything together, but my basic job at Acorn is to make sure our learning events work really well. So I spend a lot of time on those things. And I'm going to give a brief moment for Amanda and Adriana to introduce themselves. I know Amanda was coming straight from another meeting. So Amanda, are you ready to go?
Sure. Hopefully y'all can hear me. I've been having little audio issues recently. So if for some reason my audio just cuts out, somebody send me a chat. My name is Amanda Keefer. I'm the program director for Shasta Head Start. We are up in the far northern California area, just about an hour and a half south of Oregon. And I've been with my program for over 20 years as a program director, but also as an infant toddler specialist.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Adriana Salgado. I'm the Family Community Engagement Coordinator for Volunteers of America Los Angeles. I've been with Volunteers of America for over 20 years as an FCE coordinator, but also as a teacher, a family advocate, a case manager, and I also did ERC. And our program is actually all throughout Los Angeles, so you can find a VOA LA Head Start program site anywhere from San Pedro to Santa Clarita.
All righty. And I definitely want to say thank you to both Amanda and Adriana, because coming in, taking the time to share what they do with other Head Start programs, this is one of the most valuable things that can be done. Programs sharing the things that have worked in their programs with other programs so that everybody doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. And particularly today, where we're talking about something that is both straightforward and complicated, but definitely a lot easier when you can see examples of what it looks like in the real world. So just to give some basics, I'm going to be going through a couple pieces today, but mostly this is about the showcase with our partner programs. We're going to talk about webinar basics a little bit. I'll give a quick review of kind of what guidance documents are and the role they play. Then the program showcase is the biggest part of it with Shasta and Volunteers of America. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for review Q&A, and I'll give a little bit of review at the very end about what's going on with Acorn Evaluation. So the basics of how we use the webinars on Zoom are pretty straightforward. Just as a quick reminder for all the people who have come in since the beginning, this webinar is being recorded. At the end of this webinar, we will save that. There'll be a link to it, and an email will go out that provides a link to that recording for everybody who is here and also everybody who registered who couldn't join us. Live captioning is turned on, so you should be able to see the closed captions if you want to. All participants aren't muted for the most part until we get out to the Q&A at the end. We do have a short anonymous survey that we ask at the end of the webinar. We practice what we preach on quality improvement. We are very interested in feedback, both on things that would make these webinars an improved experience for everyone, but also on webinar topics you might like to see in the future. One of the things with this, everybody always asks this, I'll get this out of the way. The slide deck will be coming in that email along with the recording of the webinar. So the slide deck, all the things that we run through, the complete one for the whole webinar will be available to everyone in a PDF form later on. This is going to be something where we are going to see a couple real demonstrations of what guidance documents look like. As we go through, there are going to be questions that people have. So we do ask that you enter questions that you have in the chat as we go. Sometimes you might have a question, you want to save it to the end, but it's easier with Zoom to just put it in the chat. We are going to tackle the questions at the end so that we make sure that our two presenters have all of their time to get through all of their content, but definitely don't wait till the end to add it to the chat. We will go through the chat, monitor it, and have all those questions tackled at the end. So don't hesitate to use that chat feature as we go. So to start off and to kind of set the tone for what we're going to be talking about and the examples we're going to see, there's a shared challenge in Head Start. Well, we have a lot of shared challenges, but the one we're going to talk about today is Head Start programs really need to clearly define processes to ensure that quality services are provided to children and families. This is a big part of just doing the normal work of Head Start programs. And in the 2024 final rule updates, they actually have elements that are included in here that make it even more of an emphasis than it was. It's always been important, but now the inclusion of sections that talk about being very specific about roles, responsibilities, and expectations, the day-to-day work that people are doing has to be documented. Even though it's always been a good idea and a best practice, it's now part of things that could potentially come up in reviews. We'll see what they do in practice when we have the first reviews under the new rule. But at least in theory, this is now something that you have to be able to do and to demonstrate to reviewers. The challenge for all of this is it's difficult to document processes so that they're easy to understand and user-friendly. It's time-consuming to document processes. It takes teams to come together so that you make sure that your documentation works for everybody it needs to work for, and providing the access that people need in a format that works for everybody can definitely be challenging, and it's certainly time-consuming. And there isn't a Head Start program in the country where staff have a lot of spare time. So you have to be able to make that investment up front to save time and effort later on. And that's not easy to do. So when we talk about guidance documents, what exactly are we referring to and what role do they play in programs? The idea here is that a guidance document is your single source of truth for some particular part of what your program does. The information is only in one place, and as much as possible, all in one place, so that there's a single place anybody who has a question about that can go to and say, okay, I know where I need to look and all the information is there. It also has to be available to everyone who needs it. So there is an important element here. You can have the most amazing guidance documents in the world, but if people don't have easy access to them, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing as not having documents at all. So you have to have them in one place. They have to be high quality, and they have to be readily available to everybody. So in Head Start, guidance documents are usually, if you're following best practices, going to be developed by content team and leadership teams with input from staff and families. Depending on exactly what you're documenting, these teams are going to look a little bit different, but you definitely want to include the people who are going to be using them in the field to get input. It's that moment of, hey, this looked great in the conference room as leadership was looking at it, but it was difficult to use in the field. Bringing people from the field into the process early on helps to make it a better outcome. You want to use a uniform template so that when you have guidance documents across your organization, they look familiar. There isn't a learning curve every time a new guidance document comes out in a different area. You don't want them to look completely different. You don't want them to be really different from each other in their structure. So having a uniform template helps. And you always want to include the following: written and/or visual instructions for each step of a process, clear timelines, and also persons who are responsible. One of the neat things about the world we live in is our tools are getting better a lot quicker. One of the positives that came out of the pandemic is webcams are everywhere now, and an enormous amount of tools that would have not been available 5, 6, 7 years ago are readily available now. So you can include screenshots and text the way we always have, but you can also include video now in a lot of ways that are easier. The challenge is then how do you communicate those videos and make them readily available to the staff? Timelines are key because people need to know not just what they have to do, but when they have to do it by. When I talk about responsible persons, I'm not talking just about the person whose responsibility is to follow the steps in the guidance document. You also have to have people that those members of staff can call if they have questions, because people in the real world are going to have questions. Also, turnover is a huge issue and is not likely to go away anytime soon. So when you have new staff, you can give them the documentation, you can give them the training. Questions are going to come up in the real world. Does everybody know who they can contact to get that question answered in a clear way? Are those people trained so that they don't just answer the question, but they say, oh, okay, I'm going to look at this document. I'm looking at it. Yes, on page 9, we see that this is where the answer is, so that the person who they're helping also knows that you can get that out of the documentation as well. And these are important elements for how we work with these kinds of documents. So there's lots of different kinds of documents that can be developed as these guidance documents. Policies and procedures documents are very common. P&P has been around. It's long enough that we have a nice little abbreviation for it. Data coding and data entry instructions are becoming much more common. We see them much more often than we used to. Also, report instructions and monitoring plans. When I refer to report instructions, it'll make it a little easier when I walk through the example of it. But regardless of whether you're a Child Plus user, a COPA user, Go Engage, or whether you're pulling data out of My Teaching Strategies or Learning Genie or anything else, it helps to have a very clear idea of how to filter and structure your reports. So how do you pull a report so that you can make sure you're consistently looking at what you need to look at? So this is an example of a procedures document. Depending on your screens, this might be really small and might not even be readable for you, but the basic structure here, and when I talk about how it helps to have a uniform template to build from, this is an example of what one could theoretically look like. It includes information on the program or form title, so the elements that are here for us, in this example, a family strengths and needs assessment, the timeline, where are these things going to be done? Excuse me, when are these going to be done? The location, where is all this documentation going to go? Performance standards, this is very helpful, particularly if it's something you know is going to be included in reviews or if it needs to be linked directly to something that's in the PIR. But it's also useful for people to be able to see, oh, wait, there are actual standards. We're not just doing this because somebody thought it was important. We're doing it because our funding is actually partially dependent on this. In the procedural steps, I won't just read them to you because there's not time for that, but you have a description of what exactly is going to be done and when. And in the staff responsible, it's by who. And in this particular case, there's 2 steps in this family strengths and needs assessment process that would be carried out. So this is a very clear articulation of exactly what needs to happen, when it needs to be done, and who's going to do it. That can go into a documentation kit, whether it's on paper or whether it's virtual, that allows people to see those different elements. Data coding and data entry instructions. This is an example of what that looks like. You have a screenshot from Child Plus in this particular case, and you have text instructions. Enter yourself as responsible staff under Education Information tab. Your name will autofill and so on. In the image, you can see that callouts have been added so that you can see key pieces of it. Selecting your name from the drop-down menu, make sure that the current year is highlighted, and so on. Visual representations are very, very good. Anytime you're talking about data entry, you want to be as clear as possible so that everybody can see specifically what they're supposed to do, with the screen looking like the screen that they're actually going to see. So keeping these up to date is also an important part of that process. Report instructions, I talked about filtering. This is an example. Again, this is a Child Plus screenshot. We tend to use those because it's most common. If you have COPA or Go Engage, or if you're using different reports in a different platform, you will have different screens, but they do all have filter settings. In this particular case, again, a screenshot, so you can see exactly what the screen will look like, with highlighting to show the different areas that you will filter. This combined with any specific instructions about, for instance, which program term, which program option would be selected under different conditions. This is an important way to go. And then also an analysis element. So this is what that report looks like when you pull it. I won't go into every little detail of it. It's an attendance report. The important part is the call outs that highlight specific elements of this report and explain what it is that people are seeing and what does it mean if it turns red? What does it mean if this is an E versus an A versus a P? Those kind of things are important elements that you call out. So again, a screenshot with annotations as part of the documentation. A monitoring plan, in this particular case, this is looking at who are you monitoring, which report are you using, essentially providing the details of exactly what you're going to do with a schedule of when it's going to be done. Basic tables here, relatively straightforward. And then how is it that you communicate these things to staff? Are they on paper? Are they filled out? It's hard to get across the board for that. Is this all available in a book? Is it available online, SharePoint, Google Doc, whichever your program's using? So a monitoring plan is going to have those details and people can look it up and see what exactly they need to do at each stage of the process. So there's a lot of different pieces to that puzzle. A lot of benefits come from guidance documents. Everyone has access to the same information. It encourages autonomy and providing staff with tools to independently obtain answers to their questions. When you first start something new, you're going to get lots of questions from people, but as they realize, and this is why training the contact person they're going to call is important, as they realize that every time they call in, the person is referencing a section of the information that they have, they start to be able to skip that call or that email and get the information themselves. It supports the onboarding of new staff, helps to break down the silos between content areas and staff positions when these discussions became just part of normal things. So for the program showcase, I am going to turn it over to people who actually don't talk about these theoretically and conceptually. They actually do these things in the real world, and they're going to talk about what they look like in their specific programs. So I'm going to turn this over to Amanda to talk about it. And I know, Amanda, you're going to go in live. So just let me know when you need me to stop sharing the screen.
Okay. All right. So like I said, I'm Amanda Keefer, Program Director at Shasta Head Start. We're a nonprofit organization. So we're a private nonprofit. We stand alone, which has its benefits and its challenges. We serve about 256 Head Start center base children, 180 early Head Start center base, and some FCC partnership programs. We have 22 early Head Start home base, and that comes to 16 sites across 3 counties. They're relatively rural. Like I said, we're in the far northern California. And I had shared in another meeting where it's like our counties are sometimes the size of small states. And they're pretty rural, so that people are spread out all over the place and our staff are spread out all over the place. So that's a little bit about our program. And then, so I started off with kind of where we were when we decided to redevelop our standard operating procedures. We had a lot of paper copies and manuals. And when I first became a manager, you know, we do like kind of that annual purge, like you didn't change anything mid-year because you couldn't get it out there to everybody in a reasonable way. And you'd already updated these paper binders that everybody had copies of. And we still have some of that, but not so much. And then often people were referring to old versions of SOPs because maybe their binder didn't get updated or they stashed things away in a file cabinet and they kept pulling old forms. And so we needed to make sure that people had access to the most recent updates. Too much time spent training on SOPs and repeating information. We're like constantly training on things that we'd already trained on. We needed some more guidance documents to support that retention of information to refer back to. We needed to step forward to electronic file management and documentation. We were pre-COVID especially, we were very much like, we did not have a lot of just the technology infrastructure to manage a lot of this and make it really accessible. Because really you want everybody to be able to get on some kind of device and see these SOPs. And prior to COVID, we didn't have tablets in every classroom and laptops that were so much more mobile. And that's a place we are now. So we wanted to provide a place to include fillable PDFs as well and other electronic forms so that staff could just fill things in and not be doing so much handwriting and all of those steps. So that's kind of where we were. And so to get started, what we did was we hired a company to help us because I'm sure all of you have so many different pieces of information. It's like, where do you start? So we had somebody come in and meet with our management team and representatives from out in the field. So we had teaching staff and like center directors and family service staff, all joined in a brainstorming session to determine kind of what's the structure going to look like and what are our priorities to start with, because you can't get all of those SOPs written in one quick time period. You have to prioritize, what do you want to start with? And then we met with managers individually to work through kind of one SOP at a time. And the company that we used, Dash and Thompson, they partnered with us and helped us with that because we'd never really written SOPs in this way. And we used to have something that we called a formster, which is not a trademarked name, but that's what we called them, was a formster. And it basically was kind of like what Greg shared. It said, here's what this is, here's who does it. And when is it due? Where do you file it? But it didn't really tell people how it fit into a process. It was kind of just a review of the form itself. And it maybe had some bullet points about like things to remember or consider, but it really wasn't a standard operating procedure for an overall process. It was just kind of directions on a form. And so we use those to inform the SOPs and help us begin that building process. For us, what we decided to do was to organize kind of by the flow of how a child comes through the program. And I think on the next slide is when I'll share the live version. But that's kind of what we did. We were like, well, how does somebody come through this program? What's the first thing we do? So we said, first we have to recruit children. Then we have to see if they're eligible. Then we're going to select. And then we get into, okay, now you're enrolled. What are all the things we do once that family comes through our door? And that's kind of how we structured things. I think it's worked pretty well. It also has some challenges. So we'll go to the next slide. So like I said, we had input from the field staff and the managers, and we still do that. It's organized by that child family experience. And you can see here, it starts with recruitment and goes through into receiving services, which that's what we've learned is receiving services is a big monster of a section. There is so much information there that might be something that I would do differently, or I may restructure at some point, is to break that down differently. And then we have a whole section that's just about Child Plus. So like Greg was sharing those slides of just the data entry processes, they have their own instructions. And so we kind of have a structure where we link over to those. So those documents exist, but they're not in the middle of the SOP that describes the process that you're doing. Like maybe you do enrollment, but then that'll link you over so that later when you have to go do all your data entry, you can just look at the data entry portion of that. So I can share my screen and I can kind of show you the live version. Okay, so this is the live version. This website also, it's not like password protected private, but it is, I don't know the technology pieces in the background of how they do this, but it's not something that's just like live out there where anybody that comes to our agency website will see all of this. So it doesn't have confidential information about any child or family or anything like that, but it's also not part of our primary agency website. So we have these sections, like I said, down to the receiving services. We have admin operations. This is where like all of our fiscal processes, human resources, facilities and maintenance, some of those things are in there. You can see it's quite large in some sections. And most of this is really about processes that staff at the center level would need to have access to. We're also working on writing SOPs kind of more for our department. So if that's something that's kind of internal in an administrative department, it doesn't necessarily involve staff out at the center or a large group of people. It's kind of specific to, say, like a coach who coaches staff, but it's their internal processes. We don't have those on here at this point, but we are working on building them, but they're housed a little more internally in our servers. So there's all of those sections, and then this is like our enrollment. Kind of goes through various parts of an enrollment and how to prepare for your meeting, how to conduct the meeting, and some other pieces about if you have to follow through on other steps like processing an IEP. So we kind of have one structure, but sometimes there's some variables in the structure. And Greg talked about that of having consistent structure. So we always want to include things like, when does this happen? Who's supposed to do that? But this is one where we did something a little different because there's so much in an enrollment. And I mean, you fill out a lot of forms. So we kind of broke it down like, here's what that packet's going to look like. And we just took them through each step of the packet because filling out the form is probably, pretty simple. They're forms. They kind of tell you what to fill in each space. But then what we found is we wanted to have this action to be taken. So this is the enrollment cover sheet. What is it kind of its purpose? And then what are you supposed to do with it next? Because an enrollment is so many pieces. Some of it, it's like, okay, you just fill it out and it goes in child file. Other pieces, that then needs to be forwarded on. Like if you identify that the child has an allergy in that meeting, now you need to forward that documentation over to the health department so that they can work on getting the diet order completed. So we spelled that out in here so they know what next steps they need to take. So that's just an example. This one's a very long section. And then another one that's good is like recruitment. This is just giving all the pieces of like, what are our ads and flyers? So anybody can come on here. They can go to the ads and flyers. We have pre-made flyers that anybody can be at their center. Because like I said, we're all over the place. And that's really important that when you're an hour and a half, like I'm in Reading, but you could be an hour and a half away from Reading trying to recruit in a little small town in the mountains. And you don't want everything to say Reading because then they think that they're calling Reading and they want to know it's a good local resource. So these flyers can be modified and they can put in their center information so that it's a little bit personalized. So those resources are there for them, but they're also standardized with what we need them to have and have branding and all of that. And then it just kind of lets them know how to fill that out and places where would they post that, and links them over to some other tools. Like we have a recruitment SharePoint where they can put the information in and we keep track of all of that. So it links them over to other places they need to go. And I'll share the receiving services. So this is the receiving services. Starts with kind of all those compliance items. What do you have to get done within your 30, 45, 60 days? What has to be done before they start? And some of those pieces, and then goes into all of the many classroom items, lesson planning, toothbrushing, diapering. So there's a big crossover here between variety of departments because it's really about providing direct service. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. And then we can go back. So that's just the example of what it looks like right now. So the SOPs really support that continuous quality improvement. We do have a formal process in place for when changes are made, so anybody can come forward. So a teacher can look at the lesson planning SOP and say, this doesn't make sense, or could we change this process, and they can propose changes through their manager or to the program area manager. And propose those changes, or it can come through other avenues like regulation changes and you have to change it. So it can come through that. The content managers always work with the area managers. So program designers are talking to program implementers when they're making changes. If we're making changes, we try to always run a new process by a person who actually does that job. So we hand it to a family worker and say, does this work? Even if I don't tell you anything about it, does it work well enough? You can open up this process and get the job done. What questions do you have? Where's their issues? And then they all come, anything that's new or if it gets revised is taken to our management team for feedback. That sometimes goes very well, where everyone's just like, yeah, this sounds great. Sometimes we get in there and there's a lot of questions and a lot of feedback. And then we take it back to the drawing board and see what else we need to change. What do we need to clarify? And we fix any errors. And then if it's approved, then it goes on to get posted. So typically our process is going pretty quick right now. So if it's approved on a Wednesday, that's when we have our management meeting. That update could be posted by the end of that day. And an email goes out to all staff letting them know these SOPs have changed. Maybe here's some key points of what changed within those SOPs so they at least know it's new. And then it also is going to get trained on probably. If it's extensive type of change, it's going to get trained on in an upcoming staff training. So that's our process. And then just tips, getting buy-in. It's not the easiest thing sometimes to change. So trying to get staff buy-in, or even just a few key people who will be your champions. If you can find some site supervisors, a family worker, some people who are like, you know what, I think this really is beneficial. They're important to spread that buy-in. And that it can save people a lot of time, and it empowers people to take care of their own business. I think a lot of times in Head Start, you're like always getting told what to do. And it's like, if you have this, you don't have people telling you what to do because you went and followed the directions. And even if those directions were wrong, then you can say, I followed the directions, you guys need to fix it. So the SOPs cannot account for every situation. That gets a little hard in the group. Sometimes we have to say, we can't cover every what if in an SOP. We're starting to cover more of those because we've built a foundation. So we're adding things in now that we have a stronger foundation. Make using the SOPs a practice throughout your organization. I'm a program director. I do not claim to know every single process in this agency. I cannot know that. And so I really try to model with other people, even with my managers, when they're like, hey, this is happening, what should we do? I say, what does the current SOP tell them to do? Have they looked at it? Have you looked at it? What does it say? And we should follow what that says we're supposed to do, unless there's something that's really wrong in there and we realize we need to fix it. So we just have to keep modeling it, keep driving people back to the tools, and keep improving those tools as we find that they need improvement. Okay, I think that's it for me.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I'm going to turn it over to Adriana.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Adriana Salgado, FCE Coordinator. So currently we have funded enrollment of 2,126 children, and we do offer all the different program options. So we have a prenatal program, early Head Start, state preschool, center-based, home-based, and early Head Start childcare partnership. So one of the things that we had to work on was that we're a large program, so we actually have three different grants. We have a large service area. There was three different supervisors. We had three different Child Plus databases. And we also have, which I'm sure you're all dealing with, a high turnover of family advocates. And we also wanted to make sure that we were using CQI to make sure that our data was good data, but we didn't know what that really looked like. So what we did to address all those issues was first restructured the content team. So one supervisor, one process. We have one Child Plus now. So we merged Child Plus. We looked at the workflows, and again, we agreed on a procedure. So a family advocate in Santa Clarita is doing the same thing as a family advocate in San Pedro. We also wanted to make sure that we had step-by-step procedures on how to enter all the information on Child Plus, which was really helpful. Here is what our step-by-step procedure is. So this is for our family assessment, which we call the Strengths and Needs Screening Tool, and our individualized family partnership agreement. So if you hear me say SNSD or IFPA, that's what I'm talking about. So the step-by-step procedure, you can see clearly states the role of each person, the parent and or guardian, the family advocate, the program assistants. What we're working on was to make sure that the family advocates understood the tool, so there was integrity using the tool, and that the information going into Child Plus was actually quality data versus, everybody was doing their own thing. Sorry. So if you notice here, we are looking at our 90-day timeline here. Our SNSTs and IFPAs are completed within the first 90 days. And to make sure that we were doing that successfully, what we did is to not only establish a framework on how this needs to be done, we also set up a way for the family advocates to be successful. So instead of focusing just on the 90th day, we split that up into having a 60-day goal of how many SNSTs and IFPs should be completed. And then we look at it at the 75th day, and we look at it on the 90th day, which also helped us by making sure they were putting in the information correctly and they understood the tool early on enough where we could catch any issues or mistakes, offer one-on-one training, and make sure that by the 90th day we were getting the correct data, and we were sure that the family advocates were understanding the tool. One of the other things that we did was to make sure that there was tracking and monitoring at all levels. So one of the things that we do is we use a Child Plus to-do list. So the the family advocates are able to monitor themselves. So not only are we able to run reports, they get an email every month letting them know, okay, this is what I have to make sure that I'm completing in the next week, in the next 2 weeks, in the next month, but also if they fell behind on any follow-ups that they needed to do for either their SNSTs or their IFPAs. This is also, oh, sorry, you're good. So this is something that we use in order to train on completing the strengths and needs screening tools, and also our individualized family agreements. If you see here, we give them an actual case of that we see in our program. So this is based on actual families in our program. They get the opportunity to enter all of this information in our Child Plus training database. And they get to actually practice before they even go into work with the families and complete an SNST or an IFPA with them. The great thing about this is, again, we're seeing before they even start working with parents, this is during their onboarding, that they're able to understand the tool and that they understand where the data is going. So they're already working on actual family cases even before they start working with the families. So one of the things we did to make sure that they were successful, again, because there's onboarding, there's the training, there's the one-on-ones, but what do we do to make sure that they have that information at all times? So we created a family advocate manual. And as you can see, it's very specific. Somebody who's never done an SNST or an IFPA before can pretty much open up this FA manual, look at the instruction on how to enter a family goal, and they're able to just follow those steps and be able to put it in. So they have this to refer to at any time. This has been super helpful with our new FAs, especially since we do have a lot of turnover, which I'm sure a lot of you are experiencing. A new FA can come in, get their onboarding training, they get their FA manual. Okay, I got my training, I got to practice, but now I'm actually doing it and I kind of forgot what I was supposed to do. They can just open their manual and they get a digital and an actual physical copies, because we know there's all of different learning styles. So this way, whatever they're more comfortable with, they can open it up and realize, okay, yes, I need to do this. And I mean, it's very specific, like let's go open this, go to this tab and select this event. So it's very, very basic and pretty much anybody can follow it. But there's a part 2. So this is what it's supposed to look like in Child Plus. Again, you had the instructions, here's the visual. And what we did to make it even more helpful to the family advocates is we worked with all the different content areas, and they all submitted goals that the family advocates could basically copy and paste with updating the timelines of all the most popular goals, or the goals that we see repeatedly. So ERSI was able to create a goal based on when there's an attendance issue. Health was able to create sample goals based on if they needed to get their physical or their dental, whatever it would be. Education helped us create a lot of school readiness goals. So an FA who maybe hasn't worked with creating SMART goals before can just open it up, look at what content area it falls under. Okay, this parent wants to work on a SMART goal. I have an example of exactly what that should look like. We also wanted to make sure, again, that they had all the support they needed to be successful. So we created a Child Plus user group, which is once a month. The family advocates go to one of our satellite offices, and we have laptops set up where they get that half a day dedicated just to be able to enter family community engagement information into Child Plus. The great thing about this is anytime there's an update or we notice that there's a common error, or we have something coming up that they may need a refresher, we're able to do it at our Child Plus user groups, but they also have a chance to get one-on-one assistance. So our family community engagement program assistants get sit next to the family advocate, and together they can do 1, 2, or however many IFPs or SNSTs they need to be able to understand how to enter the information. This also gives the FAs an opportunity to work together, because not all family advocates feel comfortable working with one of us, a coordinator or a program assistant. We have mentor family advocates who have been there longer than our newer FAs, and they can work together, and that's also been really helpful. A lot of our family advocates are able to get a lot from a mentor FA, and it also builds that relationship where they're able to call that mentor FA whenever they have a question, or they need a resource, or it helps build that relationship where we're helping each other. And our program assistants actually gain a lot from this as well, because they're the ones that are doing the trainings when there's something new in Child Plus, when they're reviewing something that we're doing again. We do the strengths and needs screening tool twice a year. So right before we start the second one, they're the ones who are going over that with the family advocates. So Amanda mentioned this as well. It was really important for us to get family advocate feedback to get their buy-in. If you notice, these are the things that some of the family advocates let us know. So we do have a lot of family advocates who have different learning styles. So we made sure that we had the manual for our visual learners. We've made sure that we have one-on-one assistance available for those who who learn better when they have somebody sitting there with them and they're able to ask questions as they're going. We also made sure that we had, again, the instructions, but with the pictures. And we also make sure that our program assistants are actually going to the sites within the first week that the family advocate started to make sure that they know who they are, and they're already starting to build that relationship so they know that they can always call the program assistants when they have a question. The mentor FA was also something that the family advocates let us know that they needed. Shadowing an FA and having an FA that they can call with questions was really, really beneficial and has really helped a lot of our new family advocates. The last thing I wanted to share was our family advocate roadmap. So something that really helped them, again, this is also helpful with the FA turnover, is it's broken down by content area on what they can expect on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. So they know exactly, okay, it's February. This is what I should be working on. This is what's going to be due. These are the timelines that are coming up. And if you notice, this only shows ERC and FCE, but it has every content area. And on the next page, you'll see that it's also broken down by month and what the expectations are. So this is also something that our FAs mentioned that they needed. They wanted to know what the expectation was for them to be working on every single month, especially since they are working on all the different areas, and oftentimes they felt like they were being pulled in different directions. So maintenance. So we review the forms, again, also getting family advocate input every single year to make sure that the tools are not only providing the information that we need, but also that we're making them in a way that is easy for the family advocates, but also that we're updating them based on, okay, we use this tool, this is what wasn't working, this was what was working, and we're continuously trying to improve that. There's always a check for understanding from the moment that they start to even if our FAs that have been with us for years, we're still checking in on them because, again, even our veteran FAs, we've been doing this for 20 years, and there's the change. They still need that help when there's changes in what they've been doing. And monitoring and tracking, having the family advocates be able to monitor themselves. Some of them, it's a lot easier to get an email. It feels a lot more like they're saving time than having to run all these reports. They're getting an email that says, this is what you need to be working on. This is when it's due. Your follow-up for families, these 5 families are coming up. It's right there. They can print it out. And it also helps the program assistants when they're following up with them or doing site visits. They print out their to-do list and they're like, hey, I noticed that you have this coming up or you missed these follow-ups. What can I do to assist you? So our data, we have seen our data improve so much, especially with our Acorn reports that we get. We saw errors here. The first year we started to do this, we've seen errors decrease since the first year we started this process. Again, all family advocates from whatever site you call them, they're going to give you the exact same FCE process. The monitoring, again, at all levels, it has also helped us make sure that our data is quality data, and getting the feedback from the family advocates has really helped us make sure that this process is working. The FCE tools, the FAs are actually understanding them. It's not just like, oh, I'm filling out this paperwork this is, I'm putting this data into Child Plus and I don't know what's happening with it. They know where the data is going, how it's being used. We usually, all the Acorn reports that we get, we share them with the family advocates so they can see exactly where their data is going and how it's being used. And again, we're getting their feedback has really helped us improve the tools, the data, and pretty much the process across the board. Okay, that was a lot. Sorry.
I started to talk and was on mute. I was going to say thank you very much, Adriana and Amanda. So these were both fantastic, both wonderful examples of how these things can be done in practice. With 10 minutes left, what I'm going to do is do a very, very brief review because you all just saw this. And then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A, and I'll wrap up at the very end with just kind of some things that are coming in the future from Acorn. So quick review. We talked about guidance documents, the role that they play. We've had 2 excellent program showcases of different ways of bringing guidance documents out into the field staff in 2 different kinds of contexts. And basically, Acorn is here to help. We have some things I'll talk about at the very end, but let's open this up. There were a couple questions, and I do want to make sure that there's some time to answer that. So there were a couple of pieces. I know there was one in particular, which was about the sample goals. So are the sample goals in the manual, or are they directly in Child Plus? Is it something you can find as a dropdown for Adriana?
So they are actually in the manual and also in the digital copy. So if they don't have to modify it, they could copy it and paste it from the digital copy of the Family Advocate Manual. The only thing is, if they ever, we do let them know that they need to make the timelines based on what the parent needs.
Alrighty, so most of the other things that were posted in the chat were people just highlighting that they liked elements of what they were seeing. If there are any other questions that anybody has for either of our 2 guest presenters, please feel free to enter those in the chat now. Definitely want to have anybody who has any questions about it get a chance to ask those questions. I love Head Start World. You guys are all so nice to each other and you appreciate things as you go, which is really cool. You can ask questions, though. This is a good time. Oh, Rebecca has a good one here. What are some pain points that you have with the SOPs? To both of you.
I will say probably one of the bigger things is just finding everything because there's so much there. So getting them, trying to design something and organize it in a way that's going to make sense to as many people as possible, and then to go back to it and find what you're looking for has been a challenge. And part of it too is just wanting to find just a form. Like I already know the process. I just need to find that form that I do when I do the diet order, and that's all they want. So I think that's a hard part.
Definitely exactly what Amanda says. And then the other thing is keeping up with how to best, an FA manual is great, but now, making videos of doing it step by step where they can see it is something that we're working on, because you always have to keep going and think of a better way. So.
And I would just highlight, don't let the daunting thought of all of what's in your program stop you from starting. Start with what you can, start small, develop it. Don't feel like you have to go through absolutely everything in the program instantly on day 1. And sometimes it's actually a lot easier to pick 1 or 2 areas where you've already had pain points and build guidance documents that address the specific pain points that the process has gotten to your attention. So it can be daunting when you're like, oh my gosh, I have to cover all the stuff in the program. You don't have to cover everything in the program. And in fact, it might be that in the real world, you're never going to have time to do everything. So start small and definitely do that. Don't let the big picture scare you off. Other questions? Oh, actually, William added a good one in there, which is the version control. So when you're updating things, one of the comments was that when something new went out, one of the things that got included in the email was a summary of the changes. And that's a really helpful thing. Just telling everybody like, oh, hey, we've got a 1,000 pages of new policy procedures documents, everyone's head explodes because that's just so much information. If you say, we have new policy and procedures documents that have gone out, here are the 10 things that we actually changed that you need to know about. That's a much easier thing for people to digest. That's a very important thing to do. So a version control is the nerdy way of talking about that as we talk about moving from one version to the next. The practical way is just giving people a nice update summary. 99.9% of what's in there stayed the same. Here are the 4 things that did. One of those is going to directly impact our team. Make sure you look at that carefully. Real simple and straightforward to do in an email as part of the plan. Other questions? I'm not seeing any other questions come in. I'm going to go ahead and do the last part where I talk about that's coming up with Acorn. But if you have questions, keep dropping them in the chat and we can come back to it as we go. So one of the fun things about this is I get to talk about all the fun things that are happening at Acorn Evaluation. We have a lot of Acorn Learning projects that are coming up, and we have a lot of different things that are coming through the pipeline that will come through. One of the biggest is that if you are interested in this and you are thinking it would be really cool to just have a structured approach to building a plan and getting started on building some better guidance documents, we've got a workshop for that. It's coming in April. And on April 25th, it's 3 hours long, and essentially it's working through how to construct better program guidance documents. In May, we have another in our Better series of workshops, which is Better Meetings, and that is about organizing and managing meetings that are smooth and efficient and that basically people will like. If you want something that's not just 3 hours on a workshop, you're looking for something that's bigger, has a lot more content. We have 2 of our larger programs starting: the Data Analyst Certificate for Head Start professionals and the Data Literacy Credential. Both have cohorts starting in April. The Data Literacy Credential is part of our partnership with the Academy at NHSA. The Data Analyst Certificate is our internal program. It is all about how to organize data projects and how to build your teams, how to talk about data with everybody, and you will learn to do things in Excel you did not know Excel could do. So very straightforward. And we actually practice what we preach on documentation with all those technical assignments. You do have video walkthroughs as well as paper ones with all the different things that you need to do to learn how to organize those projects. If there's ever a project that you've really wanted to run and you never have time, it's a great excuse. Take that class, because the project in that Data Analyst Certificate class is actually doing a real data project with your actual data in your actual program and then talking about it in a quick lightning talk at the end. So lots of fun and exciting things are coming up. Check out the Acorn Learning website for the complete list of all the different things that are out there for the future. Right now, a big thing for a lot of programs is addressing what are going to be some challenging times coming forward. And one of the things is getting a really clear sense of exactly where you are in your ability to communicate the effectiveness of your program, the impact you're having. There's a lot of positive things that are there. The data capacity assessment is a way to assess where you are with your ability to use data across your program. We're really comfortable with coming out to your program, talking to you in a lot of different ways, interviews with staff to get some qualitative data, surveys to get a sense of where your staff feels about data, and an exploration of what the program data looks like in just some quick snapshots to help programs see areas of strength they can build on, areas of opportunity where you've got room to grow, and to have a nice package of deliverables at the end that have things like a summary of all of the key themes that came up that you can use as part of your self-assessment, as part of your grant applications, and just generally as a guide for how to focus on future professional development and organizational development down the line. So lots of fun and exciting stuff that's coming through. Next month, we have one of our really, a name that is kind of entertaining for us. It's Data Climate, Reimagining Data. I joke that we could call this Data Climate. What is data climate for a lot of people? This is going to be Stuart Jones, our CEO, talking about the overall kind of culture that exists in programs and the climate around using data and how we're in the process of trying to help change that a little bit so that data isn't something that people find uncomfortable or nervous. It's something that they start to see as normal. And most importantly, for Head Start programs all over the place, how can you move to a world where people start to see data is just another tool for helping the lives of children and families? So Stuart Jones will be running that, and it'll be a good exploration of how to help build a positive culture around data in your programs. If you're interested in anything that we do, check us out at the How We Help part of the Acorn evaluation page. The Acorn Learning page is basically just a list of all of the learning events that we have coming up with dates and everything else. So we have a little bit of time. We have actually about just under a minute. So are there any last questions for our presenters? Because I can stand up here and talk all day, but I know you were really here to hear from them. So any last questions? Not seeing any pop into the chat. So I will take this opportunity to say thank you very much. Time is one of the most valuable resources all of you have. You just spent an hour with us today. Thank you very much for coming and joining us. Thank you once again to Amanda and Adriana, who have taken their time not just to be here for this hour, but to prepare for this presentation and to tell their program stories, to share it with everybody else. So thank you very much for our two presenters today. And thank you very much for joining us. I hope to see you in future learning events and future webinars. Thank you very much.